I'm Jeff Len, Associate Vice President for Academic Operations and a professor in the business school. That's my day job. For nearly 9 months, I've been tapped by President Knapp to be the chair of the Innovation Task Force. The Innovation Task Force started way back in October when President Knapp appointed 3 committees. A steering committee, basically to get the whole thing underway and to be attentive to the process. The Business Processes Committee to take a careful look at how we do things, really an operations committee. And then a learning teaching committee that focused upon our strategies and structure for engaging students in the process of learning through teaching. We have been working very hard, as you'll find out today. President Knapp could not be here, but he has sent a video to welcome you.
Hello and welcome to the Showcase of Ideas hosted by our Innovation Task Force. Your participation in this process will really be critical to achieving the goals of the Innovation Task Force, and the main goal is to identify savings and gains in productivity that we can invest in our priorities, our academic priorities, and in our student experience to continue to improve the university and to continue to increase our excellence in everything we do. We hope over the 5-year period of this process, we hope to identify $60 million a year. That's $60 million in recurring savings that we can invest every single year in improving our programs. And that will have the equivalent of doubling the impact of our endowment, which currently provides about $60 million a year to support our programs. That's the payout from our endowment. We have a unique opportunity because, unlike many of our peer institutions, we're not right now suffering the kind of financial distress that has resulted from the economic downturn, particularly for institutions that had endowments that were deeply affected by the problems in the market. We haven't had the problem faced by public institutions that have faced severe budget cuts from their state governments. We have been able to continue to grow and to develop as a university, but if we can take this opportunity to identify savings in our business processes and innovations in the way we teach and learn as a university, we can reinvest those savings in a way that will really have a remarkable difference, I believe, and a tremendous impact on everything we do. None of this is going to be possible without the ideas that you, as members of our community, faculty, students, and staff, can provide, because you see the way we operate every day. You notice those opportunities for savings, for reducing waste, for reducing duplication of effort. And if you can help us identify those, I'm sure that we'll succeed. I look forward to the task force's report, and I can guarantee you that your ideas will have a direct influence on the recommendations the task force will be bringing to my desk. So once again, welcome and thanks for participating.
We have worked on a 4-stage process. The first one is we started back in October, and that is to gather ideas. We have gathered ideas through our website, and some of you probably have put some of those ideas up. About 300 ideas have come in through the website. The committees themselves have garnered ideas, people calling, sending emails, and in the process to bring those ideas to the table as well. The second part of the process then is to analyze the ideas. The 2 committees, the Business Processes and the Learning Teaching Committees, have taken a very careful look at the ideas that have come in, and I'll allow them to explain what they have done for the analysis. But essentially, they're looking at ideas that we can move forward on that have great impact and that are feasible. And so that's where we are now. We're beginning now to pull those together and to see what the analysis is. The third stage then is to get back to you in the community. This is our 3rd showcase session. We did one downtown last Tuesday, the Mount Vernon campus on Thursday, and now we're here at the Virginia campus. The showcase sessions are basically to bring together the community in our 3 major campuses to do feedback on what we think are the top ideas. So essentially today you'll have an opportunity around the tables to select at least 1, 2, perhaps even 4 ideas in which you can share your feedback with the committees. Our 4th stage then is to take that feedback back to the 2 committees, begin to digest that, to take a look at the recommendations, and then move forward with those recommendations with the presentation to the president and his senior staff, and that will come in the early part of June. Once they have made the decision about which ideas we'll move forward on, then we'll go forward on the process of planning, or implementation planning, beginning this summer. Now, it's very clear that we can't do all the ideas. We can't move forward at all of them. The ideas, however, that have come in will not be lost. Any idea that comes in, we already have it safely put away, and one of the things we'll start doing again this summer is pull those ideas out and develop a way by which we can do the analysis for the ideas themselves. We have continued with the process of gathering ideas. So Sarah Melita, whom some of you may know, set up 3 sessions with students about 2.5 weeks ago to get some ideas that they had. You may have guessed what the top issue was for students: dining. It's very clear that our students, particularly undergraduates, feel that our dining hall people just don't do the same thing that mom and dad do. So Sarah tried to work to get them beyond that. They came up with 75 ideas. Lindy Belche did the same thing, it was what, 4 weeks ago, with the parents group, parents council. And they came up with, what would you guess, maybe 35, 40?
I was pretty close to the student number, I think almost 70.
Okay. So we still have ideas coming in. We're encouraging you to think about ideas as well. But today is to look at top ideas. And let me start first. Now, have you guys decided who's going to go first?
We flipped a coin, he won.
Okay. Okay. You see, our co-chairs are really excited about going first here. The Business Process Committee is co-chaired by Dave Lawler, who's the Senior Associate Vice President for Finance, and by Kathy Newcomer, who unfortunately could not be here today. She is the director of the Trachtenberg School.
I won't take a whole lot of time, but let me give you a general overview, starting with the process that we followed. The first of the 4 boxes there, we got ideas from a variety of different sources, everything from submissions to a website, conversations with some of the committee members, write-ins, many different ways. And I think at the end we had close to 300 significant ideas that were redundant in nature. After we got those ideas, we brought them first to the Business Process Committee that met on a weekly basis. And they had done some pre-work. They came together, talked at a very high level about some of the ideas before us and said, you know, these particular ideas we'd like to know a little bit more about. And so we took those ideas and did one of 2 things. In some cases, the ideas could be bundled into things like space, technology, and so on. And we had subcommittees that were dedicated to focusing on some of those pieces. The second avenue was to go to an analytical support team, which was a collection of folks largely from finance, but we had budget and HR and IT representation on that team. And we asked them to spend 16 or so hours fleshing out those ideas, quantifying them, listing assumptions, talking to reference points if they existed, and putting a 1-pager together that we called a brief back document that came back to the Business Process Committee a couple of weeks later. And once the Business Process Committee received that information, we had a wealth of information to allow us to vote on those ideas and determine how well they stacked up after that review, what kind of savings could be garnered, and in the case where there were net investments, we captured that as well so we could potentially leverage that in the future. The cornerstone ideas are what we have, and then today's discussion, you'll have an opportunity to further fine-tune those ideas. Let me talk briefly about the criteria that we used. Entering into this process several months ago, we realized that coming up with ideas that were positive-sum game, meaning there were winners and winners, and we didn't have a winner and a loser necessarily, was important, because as we begin change of this magnitude at the university, the more we can focus on ideas where there are less objections and people all see, how come we haven't done this years ago, the momentum is going to develop and we're going to have some wins. We wanted to be aligned with the strategic goals of the university, so we didn't have to go back and revise what they were, so we were using that as a constraining factor. We wanted ideas that created minimal disruption to the current business, that resulted in significant savings, and we quantified that at about $1 million a year. 60 million is a big number, so we wanted to get there in larger steps with fewer initiatives. Improve the quality and experience of a broad set of constituents, whether they be students, faculty, staff, parents, neighbors, etc., and how did these ideas affect each of those. Not requiring a disproportionate initial investment. While we're doing very well financially, we want to preserve the cash that we do have. And then preserving or enhancing the quality of education that we receive at the university. This is core to our mission, and we want to make sure that we support that. A quick time to realization will allow us to ramp to that year 5 bogey that President Knapp had mentioned to us. So we took these and we voted then on a scale of 1 to 4 in terms of how we saw those playing out in individual ideas, and we weighted those across the board. So hopefully that'll give you a general idea to the criteria we used. Here's just a list of some of the ideas we're going to talk about today on the business process side: strategic sourcing, telecommuting, reduction of lease space, consolidating the processing of graduate admissions, a GW temp agency, unified calendaring on the technology side, and an energy consortium. So the first one, let me begin by a quick story. Let's say you have a conscientious employee who needs a new projector, and they know what their lumen count is and their other specifications. They go online to some of the better websites, and they look for which one can deliver it at the cheapest price, and they order. And they think, I've done a good job, I've been a good steward of resources entrusted to me, and I got the projector at the cheapest price, and they spent $1,000. I don't know how much projectors are now, but round dollars, $1,000. Strategic sourcing takes that capability to the next level. So instead of going out and searching the web in a more random manner, we try to leverage relationships that we have with vendors. So, for example, Hewlett-Packard or Dell, we buy a lot of servers and ancillary supplies and such. We probably even buy some projectors. The discounts that we can negotiate with someone like HP and Dell, in most cases, will be less than an individual going to any of these websites and picking the cheapest rate. And the savings through doing sourcing in a more strategic fashion like that, we think, is well in excess of $6 million a year. Not just on projectors, but you get the idea if you did that across a plethora of commodities and other such items. The second, telecommuting. IBM has in excess of 60% of their staff worldwide that commutes from somewhere other than a main campus, most from home or other consolidated hoteling type locations. It can be done. And this is an opportunity, I think, for us to appeal to staff at the university primarily. Of the 5,500 or so benefits-eligible employees, we think that probably 10% of those folks, so say 550, are the kind of jobs that could lend themselves to remote work. And then some fraction we could pilot and grow over time. And if we do this in an organized fashion, we can free pockets of space in different places. We can shorten the commute and the carbon footprint for employees, and hopefully enhance the work-life balance of employees who have the opportunity to work some or all of a week from home. We need to work out a lot of details, HR policies, how will we manage that, how will we set up employees for that. But we think that's close to $1 million a year on a net basis after outfitting, et cetera, associated with it. And we see it as a benefit for employees, so it's a win-win. Reduction of lease space. We have, through some analysis, determined that there's probably 50,000 square feet that could be reduced through some consolidation or elimination, incremental to what we talked about in telecommuting or some of the other plays. And if we did that, floor space in Foggy Bottom is quite expensive. I think it's on average about $50 a square foot per year. And so just under $2 million could be attained through being more strategic in how we look at square footage across the university. The next one, we looked at UC Berkeley, MIT, Stanford, and others in terms of how they processed the huge volume of applications that come in on an annual basis. And each of those organizations over the years had found a way to consolidate the processing whereby the paperwork that comes in at a much more efficient manner to a centralized location, They don't dictate how decisions are made. They work with the schools, and the schools have autonomy on that side of it. But we feel that we can consolidate the processing of information, delivering a pack, probably in electronic format, to the schools so they can make the decisions and save a significant amount of headcount associated with that, and increase the efficiency by which we process graduate admissions. The financial benefit of this one is about $1 million a year. GW Temp Agency, we spend over $3 million a year, every year, on third-party temp agencies. The downside of that is you've got a person who will come in, do an assignment, leave, and go off to some other entity. If we can find a way to harness some of the knowledge by keeping folks on multiple rotations, multiple assignments, if you will, we retain that knowledge in the university. We can cut the middleman out of play and have competitive wages for part-time neighbors that may be interested in working for us, or prominently students who it fits the profile of a student worker pretty well and would supplement or complement the work we've got for students otherwise. And we see that benefit at least $500,000 a year. We would set up an office to accomplish that. Unified calendaring, the Harvard Business Review article of last November, there was lots I've read on innovation here as we've gone through the past 6 months, but one particular concept really stood out to me as we talked about innovation, and that is the first question we should ask ourselves when we're thinking innovatively is, what if what we're doing today could not be done in the same way as we're doing it today? So constrain yourselves at the outset by saying, we're doing this, but assume you can't do that. So you've got to do something differently. What would you do? You know, if you couldn't deliver this product, how would you evolve your roadmap from a product development side, to use kind of a corporate analogy? Calendaring is one where I think we have an opportunity to look at how we do that differently. Today, a lot of phone calls take place for calendaring to occur for many folks within the organization. You make a phone call, person 1, 2, 3, 4 is available, the 5th person isn't, you start over. Now person 1 isn't available, and the cycle continues. Microsoft Exchange has had this product for many years where you put in the people, the next slot available, assuming everyone maintains their calendars, it shows up with an available time slot, you click go. The benefit there is not only a more efficient calendaring for folks' time, but the individuals that were spending a lot of time on the phone can be potentially redeployed onto other things. The other side of the $60 million are investments. I'm assuming we'll need people to help on those programs as well. So we see that as a benefit of roughly $600,000 a year. Energy Consortium, the important thing to point out here is we're not looking at this particular idea from a sustainability standpoint. The Climate Action Plan is something that the Office of Sustainability has been working on for some time, and they've been doing a fabulous job. The point on this is when we get to a net energy consumed, how do we make sure we pay the least for that? So said another way, assume that we move energy consumption from 100% to 80%, right? The savings of 20%, and that's the work that sustainability does, right? Less energy. Then what we pay for that 80% is where we're trying to target. In this particular case, we're looking at natural gas. So entering into a consortium with other academic institutions in the DC area, potentially other nonprofit organizations, to build that negotiating or bargaining power with the gas vendors, we think there's at least $300,000 to be saved there on an annual basis. So that's what we would tee up for you. Again, they're not necessarily the first and last set of ideas, but they're ideas that we hope will solicit some thoughts and feedback from you, and that they will evolve and some that have some merit. I'll be happy to float here after the presentations as you break at your table and answer any questions that you have at that time.
The other committee, the Learning Teaching Committee, was co-chaired by Diane Barton, who's the Associate Vice President for Graduate Studies and Academic Affairs, and Dave Steinauer, who's the Chief Information Officer. And Dave's going to make the presentation today.
We had some challenges on the academic side. None of us were financial at all. And my background's technology, and it was all about being the only administrator basically on the committee of many faculty members. So that was a challenge in itself, because part of what we talked about for a long period of time is not necessarily the ideas, but how we're going to spend the money, because it all gets reinvested back into the academic program, and that was quite a challenge for a lot of us. But to start out with, I'd like to, at the last minute, we pulled in some financial resources from the School of Engineering, and I want to make sure that they don't go unnoticed, because they put a tremendous amount of work and time into our proposals as we, in the faculty and myself, pulled the information together. They actually went out and did the background work to do the deeper dives into these 8 ideas that will be presented today, and actually several more besides that. But Rich Constantino was very helpful in that process, along with Jessica Dennison, who works in his office. They're the ones who help with the financial piece. And then, of course, Gina Fernandez, who is on our committee, who was pulled in, and she took the reins and sort of ran with the financial dives. So a big thank you to all of them. And we were a group of faculty made up to come up with several ideas, and we worked really hard clarifying the role. It took us about 4 meetings to get past that, because it was just not money to the faculty and the academic side. It was more about, yes, that we got to find the savings, but we also have to make sure that everything we do ties into a positive academic experience for the students. And that was actually the priority of the faculty, more so than the dollars. And hopefully behind those initiatives the dollars would come, and we found some, but there are also some that are revenue neutral, which you'll see. And then there's actually one that actually has a cost to it rather than a savings, but we felt as a committee it was worth passing on, and you'll see that as we go. So we sat down, we finally got past the clarifying of the roles, and then we formulated the ideas within the committee. As you can see, we had 37 total ideas that were not only brought up within the committee themselves, but also what came in from the website itself. So we didn't have as many ideas to work with, but we felt all of them were good. And the 8 that we picked to present to the steering committee to be passed to the community, you'll see today. But out of that, there are many others behind that, and I'm glad to hear Jeff say that those ideas will not be dropped. They're going to continue the process. The big question is, how do we keep this moving, and how do we keep it moving forward? Because all the folks that have been involved to date have been doing their full-time jobs on top of this big project that we had. So I think that needs to be clarified as we go, but I think it's important enough to make sure that the ones that are accepted we move on, but also not forget the ones that are still on the table, because there's a lot of really good ideas that I think could improve the efficiencies of the university and really hand back substantial dollars to the university, as well as improve the academic experience for our students. So out of those 37, we're going to present to you 8 today. We broke up into committees, subcommittees, so it was like 2 to 3 faculty members on each committee, and then what they did is went out and reached out to the either administrative areas or academic areas, whichever they needed to do the deeper dives and gather the information necessary to come up with what it really would bring back to the university. We ranked those in priority order by category, and then we finalized the proposals and made the recommendations to the committee. We actually took 10 of the ideas to the steering committee, and it was agreed upon that 8 would be presented initially to the community. So that's what we're going to show you today, are the 8 that we have. The first one is increase the number of hybrid courses. Now, the savings you see here is not annual savings. These are savings that will be incurred over 5 years, not annually. I think your packets, did you get packets out here? No, yes. I don't know if you did or not. But in the packets, they're broken down by the year. But what this means is we're trying to find ways to save space. And we did a study, and actually there's a lot of literature out there on this particular subject on hybrid courses. And that what hybrid courses means is you're sitting in a classroom and half of what you do is online. So it's a combination of the two, which would not be as many face-to-face courses with a student and the faculty. It would be hybrid, basically some in the classroom and some out. And as we look across this and create these courses, by 2017 we were saying 210 courses could be created in this format, which would relieve some of the pressure on the space issues in Foggy Bottom. We estimate that over that, this is actually a 6-year savings of $5.9 million on this particular one. The increase in the study abroad programming, this is going to be a little tricky, and there is a cost to ramp up to this, and there was a lot of discussion on this one when we were in Foggy Bottom. There's a lot of interest in it, especially from the academic side and of course the study abroad office. But what we're recommending here is if we have a substantial amount of students that do go abroad, but we think we can increase that, and part of the rationale behind it is there's actually a cap by the DC government on enrollment to the university, how many we can have enrolled at one time. So our thought was if we moved more students abroad, we could relieve that cap a little bit and bring FTEs, full-time students, into the university that we couldn't normally get it because we just don't have the space. The tricky part of this is we would have to mandate it to some degree to get the same amount every semester, because if you're going to really do it, you have to have the same amount going off as you have coming in. So that was one idea, and we think that would give us about $6.4 million over a 5-year period. The next one is, again, has to do with study abroad centers. We have a couple centers that are already established abroad. I think it's Paris and Madrid are the two that come to mind. And we think that with that, we could expand that program and actually use it as a recruiting tool to recruit students from other universities to partake in our study abroad programs through our centers. And we would estimate that would be about $1.3 million return on investment over time. The next one is the reorganization of the academic calendar, and there was a lot of discussion on this with the faculty because this changes the way we do the terms. It would be a 3-term year rather than 2-year, and there was some, I don't know what it was, but it was a 4x4 or something like that. Michael, can you help me with that argument that happened many times over?
How much seat time is really allocated to the courses?
Right. So it was a big discussion on that, and what the thought was we could create a January term, and it would be a three-week term from January 3rd to the 24th roughly, where a student could actually take a 3-credit course in that short period of time and really dive into it, partly in the classroom and partly online. And then this could potentially have them graduate earlier, or for those students who fall behind and are looking now at a 5-year program, this may be a way to catch up and still come in at the 4-year. Again, $682,000 is what we estimated on that. The next one is the signature interdisciplinary courses. These next 3 that I'm going to present are revenue neutral. We think they could have some payback to the university, but these are geared more towards the student experience and the improvement in their experience while they're here at George Washington University. What this does, it creates a 4 to 6 credit hour course between 2 disciplines. So again, it reduces their time and improves their ability to take a deeper dive into those particular areas, and it offsets a little bit by not really giving back, but the impact would be the academic experience for the student, and it would, we think, consolidate some of the classroom space and give us a little bit of relief on the space issues that we face in Foggy Bottom. The next one was a 4 credit hour pathway to completion of selected majors. Again, this would be targeting particular courses and making them 4 credit hours instead of 3, again reducing the time for the students and letting them do a deeper dive into particular disciplines and particular subjects that they may be interested in that pertain more to their major and would give them the ability to really dig in. Probably revenue neutral. The next one was the internships for academic credit. This one, again, was a very long and deep discussion with the faculty in general. And again, the folks that did do the work on this reached out to a lot of faculty outside of our committee itself. And there's a lot of work that goes into this. It could be that they would pay us for these credits and it would be a revenue generator over time because they would do it voluntarily or for pay in some cases now. But it would impact our ability to go out and partner with more organizations in the D.C. area. The biggest issue we had is how do we measure what they really learned in that process. So we'd have to have faculty totally engaged with that process if they went out and got an internship for academic credit. It would be a partnership between the business or the government or whatever the case may be and the faculty member themselves, and we'd have to lay out the criteria of what it really means to get that credit for that experience. And that is a challenge in itself, and again you can see there are some costs to doing that. But our thought was it would improve our academic program and our relationship with the community and maybe make us more attractive to some students if we have some of these internships for academic credit. And then the final one is a very, very expensive one, but we felt because it is a high priority on the students' agenda, we felt it was worth bringing up in this format, and of course steering committee had to bless that as well to bring it to this group. So we felt pretty strongly that even though it's a cost to the university, it's in high demand from the students, it's high profile for the students, And I know the library, and Gail was part of our committee, is very focused on this particular project because it does bring back a nicer environment, study areas, and more technology, possibly more technology for students to actually go into the library and work collaboratively together in their learning spaces. So that's why we felt this one was important to make sure we bring forward. And those are our 8 ideas. Thank you very much.
President Knapp has made it very clear that this is only the beginning of the change in our culture, and he's very clear about this. A culture that is adaptive to change, but more important, drives change as well. He had made it clear when we started talking about this way back in September that he wanted to make sure that we got good community input. So he suggested we do town hall meetings. Unfortunately, the town hall meetings kind of went out the door with healthcare reform in the fall. We saw the town hall meeting just doesn't quite have what I think most of us thought it would be with the discussion. So we're going to do something a little bit different today to encourage your discussion. And most important for us is hearing from you in terms of what you think about the ideas. You may say, yes, it's a great idea, it's not a good idea. Had you thought about this in relationship to the idea? And here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask you in a first 20-minute period to choose a table that has 2 ideas. We'll have a facilitator at the table and a note taker. Each of the facilitators will be responsible for encouraging you to come forward with your ideas. The note takers then will take those ideas and will record them, and then they'll go back to the committees.
This would follow the sustainability objective, which was to reduce the gas consumption to start with. I think Dave Lauer used the number of 20% reduction. So after we made whatever reduction we could make, then we would focus on getting the best price possible for the remaining gas that we need. What do you think about that idea? What are the possibilities? What are the advantages, disadvantages of getting together with other universities and other nonprofits in order to buy gas as a commodity, basically? Natural gas, of course, I'm talking
Leverage your buying power is we do it in the insurance side.
Actually, today I got up like 5 o'clock.
In the insurance market, we're able to present ourselves
Are there other higher ed consortiums that we could follow or look to see if this model has worked?
The only example I can give you is somewhere out in California they're doing this. That was brought up as an example for us. So we know it's been done before, but not locally, that I know, that we know. We did not do that. We did not go into that much depth yet, because this is we're looking for some feedback from you all to see if this is at all feasible or at least interesting.
Why just natural gas? Why not elaborate the scope of it? Why?
Good question. I suggested we do it for electricity, and someone said you can't do it for electricity. There's some sort of regulations about not doing it for electricity, and I don't know what they are. So we got shot down on electricity right off the bat. How about doing it for gasoline? We purchase, we have 100 vehicles at the university, and we do it for gasoline. That's possible. We actually buy fuel oil. We have some buildings that are heated with heating oil. Can we do it with heating oil? I think that's possible too. But the big bill that we have is for natural gas. Year to year. What we've done in the past is sometimes buy ahead a year's worth in advance, as you can think the price is going to go up. But that's kind of a crapshoot. Sometimes it goes down. You lose.
When we discussed this idea last week at the Manfred campus, there was somebody there who said she used to work at the Kirkland Gallery of Art, which has partnered with other government agencies to do exactly this, and that there is already such a thing in existence in DC, and that she thought it was relatively easy to join in. So I think if this idea gets ranked appropriately, we could look into what's already.
So why wouldn't they do it then? I mean, what are the downsides?
The one downside that was brought up in our committee was that it's possible that some legal people might say that this is a restraint of trade. This is a conspiracy of businesses getting together in order to squeeze the supplier. And there are legal cases about conspirators getting together in order to squeeze supply.
I guess my question would that be a way, would that be something that the study abroad centers would help facilitate in the fall, right? So the idea was to move more students into doing that type of experience in the fall. If they're on campus all semester and they're technically in a short-term study abroad class, does it still count, do they still count towards the head count? Or
so I think there's actually kind of two ideas here. So there's the study abroad centers, is that short term that you were talking about. The increase the number of students doing study abroad for an entire semester is a separate idea. And there it's the entire semester. So, 200 and odd, is kind of the target that you're looking at. And so they would go spend the entire semester in Paris. But I mean, they kind of aim at different audience. I mean, you have different clients for the two. So the short term is somebody doesn't want to go the whole semester, a few weeks in the summer. So we want to increase those. We don't have enough of those now. And also it's a way to increase revenue. Because you open it up to non-GW. No, you also open it to non-GW students, right? The short-term study abroad.
So how many more GW students were there?
we were a class of 14
GW students there?
GW students, and it was just through the business school. But there were.
So this was called a third party?
No, this is, they weren't going through a third-party provider. They were actually going through GW faculty members. So it was run by GW, not by a different group.
Could you consider it the center?
No, the centers are actually where we have staff in the country. The one she was talking about is where faculty travel with them instead of the students going and living in London and working with the faculty who are already there.
Other thoughts about leveraging this whole idea?
Well, my question was towards like the cost savings piece of it, where they said that they could potentially increase the head count underneath the cap in the fall semester if more students were going abroad in the fall. Is a short-term study abroad class count towards that head count, or do they count as being on campus still?
Yeah,
if
that
they're
would
just
be
away for a week or two?
there. The revenue is literally because people from outside. I mean, that's extra tuition.
It doesn't count if they're just away for 2 weeks.
But no,
Really
you're
still count
literally
if
paying
it's-
extra, right? That's not part of your semester tuition.
Okay.
So that's like offering a extra course that you go and pay extra for and register.
I took notes on this idea in Mount Vernon last week, and it was really interesting because the director, vice president of international programs, that's the word, programs was there, and she had a lot of feedback on this. And some of the models from other universities that have study abroad centers, whether it's in London or Greece or Germany, a lot of those facilities were donated to the university, so it could potentially be large initial outlays to build a full-service center. And there are full-service centers, is what she explained, and then there are centers that just work on placement. They don't also house you and have like a campus feeling.
It's not limiting it to students. Are there other resources, potential staffing resources in, this vicinity that we should have?
We have a group of schools that are not part of the Consortium in Washington. We have right across the street is Strayer. Down the block is Nova Community College. Marymount has a connection here. George Mason even has extra days. If we could work something with those schools, Old Dominion has a building down there.
Use their students as a resource.
We could work with them and offer the opportunities to them. And vice versa. our students today.
So Beth, how do you think we capture the need and find out from departments what it is they need in our GW10 agency?
Well, I think that it's probably one of the next areas, that type of questioning the university. What, now, from your experiences in your departments, is this something you think that you would take advantage of, that you see opportunities in your department?
Definitely, especially if we have like short-term leave, where someone is going to be leaving for like, 6 weeks or something. We want to pick somebody up that is already familiar with the campus. I'm in information technology, by the way. I'm Carol James. And we have to keep that job going, you know? And if we have somebody who already knows the institution, that's happening.
Part of the challenge.
And we use students now, so.
Part of the challenge in projecting that need might be, you don't know. We pick up temps when we have an unexpected staff vacancy or somebody out, like you mentioned, on 6 or 8 weeks of leave. That's not something you necessarily plan for a year in advance. And budget dollars are always tight too. In terms of, you do have your salary budget, you don't necessarily have a large budget for
government and make it a better program for our students and a better experience. And we had a couple of students on the committee, and they talked about internships with credit. And it makes sense to do it that way as long as it can be measured, because the faculty member actually has to be involved in the process from beginning to end. And we have to build partnerships with those areas that we're going to actually give credit to, because there's got to be, and this is where we hit a wall and had a long discussion on how do you measure whether or not they got 3 credits worth of education out of this internship. So the criteria has to be very laid out and solid and measurable every step of the way. And the faculty member has to partner with the business or the government or wherever the internship is to have this dialogue going through the whole program to make sure that each side gets talked about and gets measured. So that's the idea behind it. The student would actually still pay for a 3-credit course, but it would be an internship for them. So that's this one actually was I believe it was revenue neutral. Let me make sure. A lot of detail behind each one, as you can see. But I believe it was revenue neutral.
I agree with that. Dating everything. Make it how do we work past the issue or mandating beyond that, like going to another university or something, to maybe help defray all the costs ourselves. Have you thought about any of that?
Well, I want to make sure that we capture the concept that you just raised, which is opening the door to the community and developing collaborative partnerships with other institutions to share the costs. And then I'll answer the question. We are open to some of the parts of the community, for instance, the Foggy Bottom community, as well as to specialized researchers who might be using the unique collections. There are also partnerships with all of the universities in the Washington area through the Washington Research Library Consortium, so that we have a shared storage facility. There's some shared purchasing of databases, and students from all the universities are able to use each other's libraries and borrow directly, as well as request materials to be delivered. There are also partnerships within the Association of Research Libraries. But what I'm hearing is you think that that should be fostered even more, and we should have more partnerships.
Well, if feasible, but we could have a library that has a great collection, not only special collections, but a great collection in engineering books or something, just something to make it something attractive to other institutions or something. And maybe there could be the financing of that could be worked out. I don't know how that works now. Maybe it's reciprocal if we're doing it with others. So maybe you've already been there. So maybe this is a moot point. Okay.
It's a challenge. I think the term that we use is cooperative collection development. And that's something that has been proposed and that we are looking at, but I'd like to capture that idea to make sure that's brought.
Would this renovation, would that be a new fee for students? Or, you know, in addition to tuition, would that be a special fee for use of the library? Are we thinking in terms of that or not?
No, we're not thinking in terms of that because the library has been a centralized resource that's funded centrally by the university. There is a student tuition gift where people are able to contribute if they choose.
Mandatory pay for this.
We capture that? That'd be a good thing.
Jotted down the essence of the idea. Flush that one out later.
Okay. Because what's going to happen is once we come back with our spend analytics, we're going to have these areas that we now have to say, okay, how do we close that gap? And that's one of the tools that we may be able to use to close that gap. That's a good idea.
Right.
I mean, the thing when you say consortium, as a group, you might be able to drive down prices, but how does that make it more difficult to do business? I mean, is this definitely a way to streamline business, or is it going to add more added issues to that? I mean, are you going to run into problems with consortium?
I think that if you cherry pick what it is you're going to actually go to a consortium for, travel, like that, you could do it with things that are not, that you don't have to frequently do battle with your other consortium members or vendors, things that you can set into place and annually renew them. And travel may be a good example.
Travel would be a good one, because I wouldn't think that'd be that difficult. You know, you call Central Line or do that.
If you ever go with iExpense, you can use one of these travel websites and build a relationship where when you would procure travel that way, and then come in on your iExpense submissions, but then you're leveraging that relationship to one of these websites. I've seen that work before. So.
I mean, I'm sure that they're, again, like we worked with Expedia.
Yeah,
we built
another idea is to create a quarterly system.
How well is it regulated?
And I know there are some universities that do that. What other thoughts or reactions to the 4 credit pathway? As someone who went through it.
Would it be, I mean, I guess it's from Ontario. It's just like cramming, cramming 4 years worth of knowledge into 3 years. The student doesn't always benefit from that, right? I mean, sometimes it takes 4 or even 5 years to get everything into your head that you need to get into. How do you really apply it? And is it more of a, does this pertain to only certain classes? Is it a benefit? How do we roll it out? How do we know if it's successful?
Yeah, coming up with those measurements to make sure.
Well, yeah, and then,
how to measure it is a really good question.
You know what I mean? Because a lot of it's going to be student feedback at the end of the semester. How do we really do? Is there any sort of, okay, you're dealing with this. The only time I remember taking was a calculus. 4 hours a week of calculus. I just remember doing it, but it was like, but still you came out with it because it was often enough that you dealt with it. And of course, what happens if you went to half-hour classes, right? I mean, you get them in, the attention span is what, less than an hour anyway? You get them for half an hour and then they move on, right? But it's, could it be, how could it be structured? But it really can tell. I mean, I can see some of this for getting through some core classes, so it could shrink that, so yeah, they can graduate sooner, but it's still how many credit hours are going to take a semester, that comes down to it. Or if you just added another set of hours for that semester.
Other reactions, ideas, questions. I think it should definitely be popular for the students, 4 credits. Like Mark said, who wouldn't sign up for that? But I could certainly see the benefit of really getting to focus, I think.
on fewer things. So instead of focusing on 4 or 5 different topics, if you just basically had more time to focus on, God forbid, calculus, at least you're not trying to balance calculus, biology, physics, and something else.
Well, do we all, for 4 credit courses, do we also look at, is there anything that we think our undergraduates, when they do leave and graduate, are missing? Are there courses that they're getting shortchanged, or they're not really ready for the real world? I don't know if I'm
Pick out a couple of other ideas that you would like to get some input.
Let's start by talking about calendaring, and then if you have some comments that you would like to share about telecommuting, you can certainly do that. Try to stay a little bit more on target, share the time, as it were. So I thought that the first thing that we might do with talking about calendaring is we understand that's an interesting challenge here at the university, getting meetings together and the like, and I wonder if maybe some of you have had experience with different ways of setting up meetings and arranging for times together and using a single calendar process for the organization. Might share that with us first.
I use the calendar a lot. I work for Dave and trying to manage his calendar. And I felt like coming here was sort of taking a big step backwards, just from the calendar perspective. Because before we could do something electronic, and now basically I'm emailing, calling. It's just spent a lot of time organizing meetings. So I would probably pay. It's a lot of expense to what we have now, just the efficiency. You're scared. I'm constantly checking to make sure, calling people, double checking, and so I would love to see that. And some of the concerns I would have about it is that if we went to that, it would be enforced. To me, it wouldn't work unless you just came down at the top and said, "This is it." Because what happens now is this is it. But I'd rather do this and I'd rather do this. So that I would love to see that. And one of the other things to really consider is the fact that we're on different campuses. And then
we're using too many calendars. That's the biggest problem right now. University. Yeah. If we could, we're using calendar,
Colonial,
Outline. They were using GroupWise, and we primarily went to GroupWise because our president uses GroupWise. And so the vice president started using GroupWise. And so we felt like we needed to be on GroupWise because we needed to be able to proxy back and forth with Dave's calendar. So it's so convoluted at this point that we don't know if we have the calendar entries in there correct or not.
And then some people just choose to not use their own, or they just say, well, I'm going to use Outlook, or I use my planner. So we went, that's my point, we went unified to underscore that.
So what does unified really mean?
Well, that everybody's on the single.
There would really only be one choice.
And the other piece is that meeting schedule and logistics, finding the room that's available. If you're trying to do a teleconference between your video conference, it's a big foggy bottom. Right now, it's, on our second floor, we can do one to the Colonial calendar, but then I have to call Emily in the second floor Rice Hall and say, can you write me down the book for that?
You have to remember all that.
Right.
One of the things when we're talking about unified calendars, think about do you want the room to be does HR still own that conference room, or would that conference room then be available for any meeting? Would it be just like you're making a meeting one day, click on it and accept? So I think to be successful, you have to have those boards out there, because once you get all the artists in place, then you pull out the ones in place.
You also need to, your rooms, they need to be unified too, not your room, your room, your room. It's just a university room.
So we have to leave off these controls on spaces, much as classrooms have moved to be generalized classrooms. Many of these conference rooms that have capability need to be shared and become generalized meeting rooms that are used by What about these calendars? One of the concerns that has been articulated is worries about privacy. People not wanting to share their calendar. Is that a concern? Is it?
There are people that have their calendars blocked. I open mine up to everybody because I want you to see if I'm a resource or not. But everybody's not like that.
But it's a personal preference, but it could be your work too. Because there are some people that have things that you cannot see what the meeting is about. But then there are the features where you can block the time, but you can't see what it is. So
She said you're busy.
Right.
Yeah, I think there is a tremendous skepticism about the issue of privacy, which I've heard from some individuals, that their calendar is controlled by somebody. They don't want the community to know, I've got a block of time this week. For example, they blocked it off, or who I'm meeting with. I don't want that information because it might be a personnel issue, for example. What other kinds of challenges or concerns might there be with respect to having single unified calendar that would be
I think too, again, it goes back to control. So here I'm saying in one breath I want this unified calendar, but I don't really want anything to put anything like these calendars out.
Right, approval.
Well, yes, that's what I was thinking of, is maybe competing times. So two people are looking at a calendar, they both see that 2 o'clock is open. And then is it, based upon the type of meeting or who it is, or just purely that 2 o'clock time period is open?
Is it first come, first served?
Knock, knock. Who's going to enter
Or
the
is
door?
there a priority set up where Becky's priority 1, Carolyn's priority 2, Dave becomes priority 3 for his own calendar?
Other concerns?
Is there a particular tool that's already been identified as the one that the university would go to? Or is it?
No, what we are talking about here is just an idea. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What are the concerns? So that we could then take that back and massage these ideas further.
I think that another concern for me that I've experienced using Colonial Calendar is people scheduling the same time, 2 meetings at the same time, and you see conflict. And you don't know if they're going to attend your meeting because they have it there that they will attend, and then they have somebody else's meeting at the same time, and there's a conflict, but you don't know who's going to show up. So I find that to be a challenge.
It doesn't have any undergraduate component at all, and we think that that whole program, I think that that whole program, plus the faculty and the staff, could all be moved out here, because there's no need, there's no justification for their being downtown, because they don't touch the undergraduates at all. That's to me is a very important criterion is whether or not the undergraduates are involved, because they're all downtown. So what other operations or what other possibilities are there in reducing our lease space, moving it here, or just getting rid of it in general? We did close down 2 pieces of lease space recently. One was eliminated on the 31st of December and one on the 30th of March. And so we save about $2 million a year on those lease spaces. And that's the first savings that went into this new pot of money. And those were easy. They were getting ready to close down, so we didn't have to do much work about it. Other things we're going to have to work at in order to get that lease space down. Any thoughts about that? Any thoughts about functions that can be moved here or consolidated in any way?
This is just kind of a side question, but have they looked at our leases and trying to buy the real estate involved with our leases?
To attend lecture
in DC? Because I'm assuming we're, want to maintain a strong presence.
Most of the spaces that we lease, we're leasing parts of a building. Small, 1 floor, 2 floors in a 7 or 8 story building. And I don't think the university is constrained as to where it can buy property in the district. There's a line. And most of the rental space that we have is outside that line right now. Line can be changed, but right now, for example, we're not allowed to buy property on K Street or anything north of it.
We do have some lease space in Arlington and Alexandria, and some down at Hampton Roads. And that space, I think, is outside of our campus boundaries, but probably could be purchased if we wanted to do it.
That's true too. The spaces that are in, again, in Crystal City, in Arlington, we're a small part of a bigger building. And those are locations where they offer degree and non-degree programs where they want to be out in the community, but they want to, we discussed this with the person from the College of Professional Studies, to maintain flexibility to move to where the students are who want a program. So, and they want to stay near metros, and so they take bits of space that they can get. They want to consolidate and move back on campus, but that's not where their student population is. There's a lot of different factors that drive where we rent space.
How would, say, changing the library over to be more of an electronic distribution center, or even, have more of a local type thing where, you may not be able to walk in and get the book, but you can get it brought downtown within a day or two, so that the books that aren't necessarily used may be out of this campus. And then if somebody really calls for it, they bring it down, thereby reducing the amount of square footage, say, in Gelman.
I can tell you that Gelman is moving to an electronic library very, very quickly. I mean, if you've been in Gelman in the first floor now, there are no books on the first floor. They're all computers. So the first floor has already been cleaned off of books and stacks.
But what else are we storing downtown that really should
Storing, okay.
We just build the data.
You've got to have a process and recompete it, which is one of the, compete it regularly. Otherwise, you start to forget how hungry they need to be for your business. So, and not everything, it's important to qualify what might fit into a strategic sourcing agreement and what might need to be more custom as far as purchasing. Also, there's probably a threshold too. If it's an investment over $80,000 or $100,000, you probably want some kind of other strategic sourcing arrangement for it that maybe not an aggregate purchase, but maybe a little bit more objective and a little bit more cross-spectrum as far as who's evaluating what you're buying.
I think another
key. I think if you make it easy and less expensive, people will use it.
That sounds right.
And if you make it more difficult and expensive, they'll quit using it and they'll find a different path.
Right. My summary comment on that is find ways to reinforce the desired behavior, whatever those are. So communication, regularly revisiting how much the costs are, and what the process is, and what the commitment to response on the process is.
And I think that's one of the problems with the procurement right now, the iBuy, is it's harder than Amazon and it's more expensive. So people go to...
Double negative.
Yeah, so they go to Amazon and use a fee card.
Right. So I... Go ahead.
One thing that I heard somewhere else when they were trying to roll out a similar program was they generated reports to the largest user departments, and it wasn't because they were asked to, because they basically generated reports with here's what you're spending and here's what you could have saved if you had used our preferred method. And they only did it a couple times to be the largest user departments, so that it wasn't a tremendous use of time or money some of these work, that it seemed effective.
Where is this?
University of Michigan.
I think you can validate the savings.
Well, Well, and so to your point, I think that making it easier and making it cheaper, the easier part we need to address through improvements of our existing tools. The make it cheaper part, we need to get our procurement organization built in such a way that they're, again, not reactive, but they're proactive. They don't process invoices, but they can do this constant renegotiation of the contracts and keeping the vendors hungry. Because you're right, if we sign something today and then don't revisit it for 5 years, we're getting pricing from 5 years ago, and we've never let anybody else compete for that business. Whereas if you, and today it's not because people are lazy, it's because we're not staffed as a procurement organization to work that way. So we need to staff it so that we can work in a function that has people that their job is to go out there and constantly revisit those big deals, big contracts, and keep vendors competing for our business.
One other observation to add to that, Adam, because I think that's right, is when when we're revisiting these agreements, the volume purchase agreements, have it not done in a vacuum as well, because sometimes there could be ramifications to maybe changing from Dell to HP, for example, that perhaps there's a departmental process that's counting on some things that are in that contract that might have some cascading projects or resource requirements as a result of making a hasty decision.
Quality issues. There might be a definite problem, so I need to bring that out.
One of the big things that was talked about in committee about this idea being one of the favorites was that it had to emphasize the addressing of user requirements. So it's not the procurement agency or organization that's going off in a vacuum and making a decision, but it's the department says these are the 10 things we require. Now what name is on the product at the end of the day, we don't care, but it has to do each one of these 10 things. And as long as those are being driven, then you can address the, hey, we may be mandating you to come to us to buy this, but we're going to fill each one of your 10 requirements.
Special trips, usually when they're already going down to DC for classes so many days a week. But then in addition to that, most of the projects that they have in the kind of degrees I think most of our people take, they definitely have to work as a group on a project, so that requires them to go even more days down into DC. And no matter how you do it, I mean, there's a cost, there's a carbon footprint.
Do we have any accreditation issues with, the Med Center had accreditation issues with the study space and some of the student resource issues, and I just wonder if that could be baked into this as a cause for doing it. It sort of foregoes any future accreditation issues with technology or study space. I'm not trying to make up a problem that we don't already have, but if it's something that we haven't foreseen or that we're trying to address elsewhere, then maybe that could be another case for doing this.
And I can answer that a little bit to an extent because I was on the steering committee for accreditation the past time. It was not an issue for accreditation that would have made a difference whether we were re-accrediting or not. However, it was noted in the accreditation report that there was insufficient study space and that there was a need for additional library space. And this would increase the public space.
Just like I think what Heather had to say.
Gail, how would this give us the recognition, the further recognition in line with the MAP's goals of having us as a research institution? How will this contribute to that?
Research shows that the deepest learning occurs within communities. So when students are supporting each other and they're working with faculty outside the classroom, deeper learning occurs. And this kind of space, we anticipate, would foster that kind of intellectual community and deeper learning.
How many units or whatever it is, I don't think you could fit there?
universities, how many units can we fit in there? We did a very rough estimate of space for 50 stations. However, we anticipate that as we reduce the print reference collection further, that we would be able to expand that space and create more public spaces and collaborative spaces.
Because the law school and the medical school have their own library. Is this something that'll bring the Gelman Library up to where they are, much better than they are? Is there going to be an equity issue where it looks like we're spending a bunch of money on the Central Gelman Library and the law school's going to say, hey, wait a minute, we wanted to do something similar, but you only gave us X amount to do what we did. Is there something?
Well, the library has actually done quite a bit of renovation, and they're funded through the law school budget. They're quite generously funded.
I agree.
The medical library has had to do some renovation because of accreditation, so they've got
Being the man who has all the answers, I think what happens is you incentivize your person by giving them some of the savings. So if you spend $100,000 a year.
Thank you all very much for coming today. Your ideas are very important. Now, before you go, let me say that your ideas will be collated, and we have something, is it close of business tomorrow, that we use the word close of business tomorrow? Okay. Okay, but basically we expect that all of our scribes will get their input in. It's centralized then and distributed to all the committee members, divided and distributed to the committee members. If you did not have an opportunity to get a word in edgewise or get your ideas, I know a couple tables, it was a little tough to get a word in edgewise, please put it onto a card. And as you go out, you will see a suggestion box. You can put it in there. Second opportunity, and that is to go onto the website, the GW website, under Innovation. You will find all 15 of these ideas with the second page that describes them, and an opportunity there that you can put your ideas there. Third, you can contact me directly, or I hate to say it's Dave Lawler directly, or Dave Steinauer. These guys don't have anything to do, of course. But if you have any ideas, don't hesitate to do it. Let's get those back, and we'll distribute those. Again, this is very important, to get the community input, get back to the committees where they take a more careful look at the ideas, and then the president and his senior staff, along with our steering committee, will be responsible then for taking the ideas and saying, okay, these are the ones we think we should move forward with immediately. So we will have more information about the ideas and the implementation plan. Here's the final thing I'd like to say. This is not the end of new ideas. If you have another idea that you think is very important, it's either going to help us be more effective and more efficient, don't hesitate to put those in through the website. We're still collecting ideas and continuing then this process of taking the ideas, digesting them, and making the changes that need to be made. The one thing I have discovered as I've been involved in this over a 9-month period, George Washington University is a very large, complex institution. And even I, as I've sat in through all the committee members' meetings, I have come to a recognition I had no idea this was going on. I had no idea these people were doing this. I had no idea that you could do the following. One of the things that I've discovered in this entire process is that we, as a large university, need to come together with the ideas we have as we discover the fact that we're all part of George Washington University. Thank you very much.